Go to the gym and it's straight. What up? What up? What up? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this 14th episode of the Backwards K Baseball Podcast. I am Chris Asbrock, and I am your host today. And always, I'm joined by my co-host, Scott Kaiser. Scott, my man, how you doing, buddy?
Not esteemed this week. I guess I'm just doing all right.
You're always esteemed. I just don't want to I just don't want to keep pumping your tires. That's all.
That's fair. I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
Happy Bobby Bonilla Day to you as well. The non-playing former players with their deferred contracts getting paid today. I wish I got a big chunk of change in my bank account on July 1st for doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Unfortunately, I'll never see that. So, I mean, at least it's, at least you and I are together on that one. But there's three big guys who are getting paid, pretty hefty today. Bobby Bonilla, as always, on July 1st, like you stated, and Ken Griffey Jr. for the Reds is getting $3.6 million, making him the fifth highest paid Red this year, which is, amazing. And Chris Davis as well. He's getting paid a nice chunk of change from the Baltimore Orioles. So those guys love July 1st, man. I can't say I blame them.
Yeah,
one bit.
I'd be setting up something to have some type of acknowledgement for it every first. I mean, I'm sure Bobby doesn't need any reminders as many people throw out the Bobby Bonilla. Heck, it kind of slips my mind until July 1st when I see those first social media posts start flooding in, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Way to go, Bobby. I know. Good for you.
I did. I saw it today, and I was like, oh, man. And then by that time, I was like listening to the leadoff spot on MLB Network Radio because Steve Phillips is, the host on there, and Steve was the one that did that. And
I was going to say the one that signed the deal.
He's the one who did it. So it always makes it better. But yeah, it's always a funny day in the world of baseball. July 1st, man. It's hard to believe we're already through June. Now we start July, man. It's crazy how time's flying right now.
Baseball season halfway over, despite the fact that the common prevailing thought is that the season is halfway over at the All-Star game, but nope, we are halfway through games played, and we got the All-Star break coming up in a couple of weeks, which, is it just me or is it later than usual? I'm used to it being during single digits, and I looked and I'm like, nope, it's not till the week of the 15th. So
it's kind of been like the last couple of years, it's kind of been like the 10th, 11th, like 12th, like that range, like low double digits. But
yeah, and I just when I looked, I thought I expected it to be week after next, but nope, two more weeks. So
it's crazy. It is crazy.
Scotty, thanks for joining us. He says that Steve Phillips and he went to the same high school. That's right. I always forget that Scotty lives up there in Michigan, and that's awesome. Steve mentions that all the time on the show. How he's from
outside
Michigan.
of Detroit.
That's
there we
cool.
go. Yeah, that's awesome.
Good stuff. And speaking of good stuff, we got a hell of a show for you guys tonight. Besides Bobby Bonilla Day, we're gonna check in on how everything's going around the league halfway through. We need to dice up Chris's Reds and discuss why things aren't going the way we thought they might be going. We're also going to talk a little college baseball because we had one of the funniest things happen after last week's national championship. The national championship going on during the show, and Tennessee walked away with that. But after the game, I think what happened after the game might have been more talked about than the actual game itself. But we'll get to that a little later. You want to lead things off, Chris?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All righty, man. Well, it's another week and another group of guys going on the IL. Yeah, I know. That's been the theme of this 2024 season so far. Now it's Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper of the Phillies hitting the IL, and now Nick Lodolo of the Reds hitting the IL as well. So this has been just a season where it's nobody's safe. And that's that's the hard part about, seasons like this is, obviously every single year you have injuries, but this year seemingly there's been a lot more and bigger names we've seen on the IL.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's been the hard part. It sucks because, like I said, each and every year you're going to have the injuries, but when it's the stars, every single freaking week we do this, it's literally we're naming a big name player on the IL, and it's like, man, I'm getting tired of saying it each week, but yeah. Luckily for these three guys, it looks like it's just a 10-day IL stint. Hopefully, nothing more. I know the Phillies, losing Harper and Schwarber. That's tough for them. And
same game. That's what was crazy about this.
Yeah.
Schwarber pulls his groin early in the game. I get the notification, and I'm like, oh, that's no good. And then to end the game, Bryce Harper trying to hustle out an infield hit and going down the line and comes up lame to end the game. Ends up with the bum hammy. And this is after, I mean, not that there's any love lost on me for the Phillies, but the Phillies had already had to deal with the fact that Trey Turner had that really severe hammy pull that kept him out. It was only supposed to keep him out for a little while, and it ended up being over a month for him on that one. Like you mentioned, though, hopefully Harper and Schwarber have avoided serious injury, timing like that. And preliminary results said that, but I we've talked about all these big name injuries and whatnot, and Trey Turner being one of them. There's been a few times where it's like, oh yeah, it's not that serious. Everything should be good to go. Should be a minimum stay. Max Muncy's been on the IL with a he strained his what did he do? Oh, he pulled his what's the thing everybody does now? the lats. It's the
lat strain or whatever. And it's
right.
Like, I mean.
Yeah, well, and it's kept him out. Now they put him on the 60-day IL, but yeah, another one that started out, oh, everything's fine. It'll just be a short stay. And next thing you know, we're looking at 1 to 2 months. So Phillies have been rolling. So if, in their case, they're hoping that it's not too long, and at worst that they're out, through the All-Star break, which does come through in a couple of weeks, and they've got a good enough lead that they should be all right. But
yeah,
but you don't want these to. Yeah, I was gonna say you don't want these things to linger, and you hate it when it happens to the stars. Like I am very, very tired of getting alerts on my phone that another superstar player is on the shelf for any amount of time, even if it's only a day or two. It's irritating.
And it sucks because, you and I, obviously we text every day, and it's like, one of us is like, oh man, hey, did you see this? Or, hey, did you see that? And it's like, good Lord. I mean, like you said, it's tiring after a while, and it doesn't matter what team you root for. You hate to see the stars go down, plain and simple.
Right.
That's just, it sucks for the game. Baseball is incredible anyway. And anytime you get a chance to see the stars, that's what makes it worth it. And unfortunately, it's just the same record that we play every single week on the show, leading it off with injuries and guys on the IL. Yeah, it's definitely tiring. Leading up to the All-Star break, hopefully for some of these guys it gives them a chance to rest up, even though the All-Star break, you like to see the guys, the All-Stars in it. But some of those guys, I just want to see them get healthy and get rested up, and then boom, let's make it up for a great second half of the season. That's what it's all about. But it's just, like I said, seemingly every single week, it's just getting kicked in the teeth with an injury notification. It's just, like you said, Scott, it's tiring after a while, man. It's just brutal. And luckily for these guys, like you were saying, it's not, even with Nick Lodolo with the blister. I mean, people laugh at, oh, it's a blister. He's only, but yeah, obviously as a pitcher, you can't throw, with a blister. It's just, you can't do anything. So that sucks. But the other two, Harper and Schwarber, yeah, I mean, hopefully, they avoid the long-term stint. Hopefully it's just that 10-day boom, done and over with. And then, let's get back to, to baseball again. But yeah, it's rough. It's highly obnoxious, man. I'm telling you.
Before we get any further, I have got to ask you, I need you to talk about your hat. because I know that is a minor league team cap there, and I was like, I'm assuming those are Angry Cherries, but I have no idea. I have no idea what that team is for. So we get further, I need you to break that down for me.
It is the Traverse City Pittsbitters.
Nice.
From Northwoods League. It's actually summer collegiate baseball. So
that's amazing. Speaking of Michigan and Traverse City, I know Michigan up there is cherry country. So
I got family who lives up in Traverse City, and my aunt and uncle, they have like one of their they've got like a business they own, and their building that they run all their businesses out of is literally right next to the stadium, and it's awesome. It's such, Northwoods League, for summer collegiate ball, you've got the Cape Cod League and you got Coastal Plains League. Northwoods League is legit as well. It's produced some absolute studs. You can watch their games on ESPN Plus. So
really? Okay.
Oh yeah.
What level are they? What is that? Double A or
no? It's summer collegiate. So college
just summer collegiate. Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Just like Cape Cod League, it's like these. Some of these dudes go and they play. They've got like Great Lakes division. I forget the other division, but it's all northern, like Midwest basically. Yeah, it's got to rep the Pittsburghers, man.
I was gonna say, I was like, well, Angry Cherries spitting their own pits is an amazing idea for a hat.
Dude, they used to be. I'm trying to think. They used to be called the Traverse City Beach Bums, is what they were, and that's when I went. And at that time, they were an independent league, so they were against, like, at that time, the Florence Freedom. They played the Freedom all the time. And then some. I don't know how. Obviously with the shuffling of the minors and stuff like that in independent league, that changed. And then, they just went summer collegiate. And then, they got some dudes, man. It's awesome. It's fun to watch. Yeah.
Well, I can safely say that I don't think you're wearing a do-rag this week.
I'm not. I'm definitely not.
3 weeks that it doesn't look like you're wearing a do-rag. Just a definitive sweet logo hat.
Yes. So. Yeah. This one I had to rock it. It's definitely one of my favorites. I love it.
Matt Bart chiming in that the Flying Squirrels did their Negro League Heritage Night on Saturday, and that they beat the brakes off the Black Yankees. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or bad.
I know. I don't know how to take that. I'm
like how deep does my Yankee hatred go? Do I even hate the Black Yankees?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, well, is Scott jacked up for this or not? I don't know. I don't know how to read this one.
I think I'm just going to pass on that one. I've never been confronted with that. So
that's a new one here. 14 episodes in, man. That's a new one for us. I like it. Always keeping us on our toes. I appreciate that, guys.
And I mean, the Flying Squirrels with another amazing minor league logo / branding with their hats and everything. So,
dude, I legit can go through and just go and team by team. And I mean, I bought a Hartford Yard Goats hat, and I was like, dude, I mean, it's Colorado's AA, and I was like, dude, it's a sick logo. Right. I'm like, it's freaking awesome, man. I'm like, some in minor league just branding it's just legit.
Oh yeah, no, we've talked about it on Craftwood Sports a time or two, where it's just like minor leagues, because they can have fun with it and change it seemingly whenever they want to. I love it. I love when they do just the the one night only things where they change the logo and branding and everything like that. You need a Trash Pandas hat. That's what you need.
Oh yeah, those are sick too. Yeah, Rocket City Trash Pandas, baby.
Yeah, I like that one.
Because I know one thing, like with Traverse City, like they do, like the alternate branding thing. It's like the Traverse City Cork Dorks is one for like wine country up there. They got a lot of the wine stuff. And there's something with it's like the Great Lakes Tourists or something like that is another one of their brands that they do with the the one night only thing. But yeah, Pittsbitters is where it's at, man. It's freaking legit. It's awesome. I love it. Love it. Good old cherry country up there.
Well, we mentioned we've made it through the halfway point, and I guess we kind of take a look at the league in general, but we were going to break down, we're going to get a little bit in depth with the Reds so far. The league in general, though, just to start off with things, everything's more or less went how we thought it would so far. There's not a whole lot of surprises, across the league when you're talking about the divisions and the standings. Maybe some of the teams are doing slightly poorer than we thought. And I know the Astros are still climbing their way back up from a horrid April, but the lay of the land looks pretty much how we expected, I think.
Yeah, I mean, going through because I just had to pull up the standings here real quick just to double check myself. But yeah, Baltimore, now they're tied with the Yankees for first place in the East, but they're ahead in terms of winning percentage. I mean, that's a battle that we kind of expected all the way through. The Red Sox. I mean, I would say the Red Sox are really the only team that have been kind of
a surprise. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could say Toronto is a surprise as well for how bad they've been. But right now you got Tampa Bay at 500. But over in the Central, I mean, I would say Cleveland is the team that neither one of us had them winning the division, but they've been hands down one of the top teams in all of baseball. I'd say they're definitely overperforming. Minnesota, really the only one that is really underperforming is really Detroit, and I think you had Detroit winning the division, but they've just
whoops,
nothing's gone well. But in all seriousness, though, like nothing's gone right for them. I mean, it's just sometimes that happens, So I'm not going to sit there. I'm not going to shit on you for it. It's just, I mean, hell, I had.
Did you pick the Royals or the Reds?
I had the Royals, and I mean, they're 7 back right now. So
yeah.
But I'm trying to think. Did I have? I'm looking.
I mean, to be fair, I was going to say, to be fair, in our assessment of the American League Central, we did say that it was kind of just like a cluster, and it would be
we did. We said
Twins
were teams.
Right, the Twins were right there, and I think I basically picked the Tigers because why not with the teams that were kind of jumping up there. We didn't think the Twins were going to perform, as they did last year and kind of run away and hide with things. Cleveland was kind of a dark horse 2 years ago, and then last year kind of struggled, but it's not entirely shocking to see them back up there. And then the Royals have played much better with the signings and additions that they had. Yeah. And then there's the White Sox, who have just been left for dead because they're more or less a 4A team at this point. But I mean, that division in general, I guess I'm not going to get too down on myself about picking the Tigers because it was more or less just hey, any one of the top 4 teams in that division could do something. And so far it's been Cleveland, but there's still enough time that Cleveland could fall back to the pack, or any one of those teams, kind of Minnesota, Kansas City, or Detroit could make a run if they got things in order. Although I feel less confident about Detroit doing that at this point in the season, mostly because I didn't see Torkelson still being back in AAA, playing his games and spending most of his summer in Toledo so far this season. That's set them back quite a bit. And just their offense in general. I think that the Tigers' pitching has been about what I expected it to be, with Tariq Skubal leading the way and whatnot there. But the offense has just struggled a ton. So,
and that's one thing that was interesting, because we, in our assessment of the division, we didn't expect that. I mean, Detroit made moves to where, we thought, I mean, they were going to do something with it. And unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out.
Well, and Flaherty, Jack Flaherty has been a welcome surprise. And then, they signed him to that 1-year deal, and no way of knowing what Jack Flaherty would provide after last year when he bounced to ended of this season in Baltimore after they had traded for him for the stretch run, and he performed a little bit better, but just in general, Flaherty hadn't been the Flaherty that we had seen in his earliest days with St. Louis. And, it's been nice to see him bounce back and be healthy for the most part. He did have a sore back there for a couple of starts that kind of hindered him. And last start, he wasn't as sharp as, but the season on the whole for Jack Flaherty has been, I'm sure the Tigers haven't been upset about. But yeah, I mean, between, when you've got Torkelson sitting there in AAA, and I know Austin Meadows was another one that they were counting on to, put up some decent numbers after the way he played in the second half of last year. It just hasn't quite come together, which, when we talk about the Reds, it's kind of been their problem is, they've gotten a little bit more out of their pitching, but the offense has struggled.
Oh yeah. That's been, I mean, we'll go into that here in a little bit, but and one thing that I had seen with the Kansas City Royals, they were talking about, they're going to be aggressive coming up to, supplement what Bobby Witt has done and what you have Salvi. They're going to, from what it sounds like, and again, that could change because right now they're 7 back of Cleveland. They're still in it. Like you said, Cleveland is going to come back to the pack. It's just a matter of, do they fall completely back or do they fall back enough to where it just makes it a little closer for comfort? That's all. I don't think Cleveland's going to lose this division by any means. It's just a matter of how much of a run, you're going to give to Minnesota and Kansas City. But, like I said, the news coming out of Kansas City, and I saw it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, late in the week, I remember. But, like I said, they were planning on being aggressive coming up during the trade deadline, or leading up to the trade deadline, I should say, to make that push. Salvi's towards the end of his career, and you got Bobby Witt, who is, we just talked about him. Was it last week's episode or the week before? Bobby Witt's the guy that you want to start your team around, and that's that was unanimous from all of us, it seemed like. And it's only fair for Kansas City to do that, in my opinion. I think you've got these guys, and you owe it to Salvador Perez, who has been your guy forever. Now you've got Bobby Witt, this young stud coming through. Make a run for it. The division is ripe for the taking if you can make that uncomfortable for Cleveland. Who knows? Again, the way it's sadly the way this season's gone, injuries have been again what we've talked about. Yeah. Any team that avoids the injury bug the second half of the season is going to be in great shape. Plain and simple. And obviously that's the most obvious statement you're ever going to hear on the show, but it's true though. The way it's gone so far in 2024, any team that can avoid it is going to be, especially this year, is going to be pretty damn thankful for, for what they've got. So,
and we briefly touched on the White Sox, and I know that they're down there at the bottom toiling in the division, but there was reports today that their stud Garrett Crochet, who has come on in his first full season, and it's just been amazing throughout this season. But there's reports that they fully expect to trade him by the time that the deadline rolls around. So it'll be interesting to see not only what they get back, because I'm pretty sure he's got 3 years left to control before he becomes a free agent. So he's got, some time there before a team would have to worry. But, not often that you see a guy like that, as young as he is, but for a team that, needs to kind of turn the page and hit the reset button on everything. They need to get rid of Luis Robert. They've got a bunch of dead weight there on offense. It just has not panned out with guys speaking of injuries, their offense has been much maligned and injured over the last few years. And even when they did try to, go for it, didn't quite work out. But now, having that giant trade chip in Garrett Crochet, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But also how the new team handles him, because he's never thrown more than 60 innings in a season.
I know. Yeah.
So the fact that he's already over that number and you've still got 2 more months left of the season, it's kind of a buyer beware. And that any team that would be looking to acquire him would have to massage him the rest of the way. And it's more of a future move, or it's just as much of a future move as it is, for the rest of this season. But that's a big time piece to change hands for somebody. Somebody's going to, end up with a really good player there. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, but also what
team would what team do you think he would go to?
God,
that's the I know it's hard.
I've tried to, because the talk has been that, it was most likely that they were going to trade him at some point. And it's really hard to tell who's going to go there.
Because it's been pretty low key and not tight lipped, but you're not hearing much out of it, and it's weird because sometimes you'll see at this, especially right now.
Well, and again, if you're a contender and you're in a spot where you need another starter, yes, he's done very well this year, but have the White Sox used most of the bullets that he's got for this season?
Exactly.
Like, are you trading for a guy that you might have to put in the bullpen, or who struggles with, effectiveness or innings? Or, hey, the reason why he's never pitched that many innings in a season is because he's been hurt. If you get you get a Garrett Crochet and he immediately goes on the shelf because he's, reaches limits or whatever it may be. So I think you got to be real careful if you're a contender and what you give up. So I don't know who has the stomach for it. I mean, you're not going to trade him in division, so that eliminates a Kansas City who might be willing to take like a risk like that, because getting a young controllable player is something that they would be more likely to
that's right up their alley.
Pursue. Right, that's something they'd be more likely to pursue than a rental. But I don't know. Maybe the Cubs. That's a team that maybe I could see doing something along those lines. But they're on the fringes, they're on the outside looking in. So I don't know how much they want to invest in a guy like that either. So
I'm gonna pull up here. See, I had to switch to my phone here for the standings. Yeah, because right now the Cubs are in last place in the division as of right now. Yeah, 11.5.
Are they? How far are they back in the wild card?
Oh, let's see here. Shit, I gotta go.
So I was going to say, at that point, I guess if they're a dead last in the Central, which I was unaware of, they probably won't be doing. They wouldn't be the one. I would think.
Well, remember how we were talking last week about there was literally every single team but Miami and Colorado were in the hunt.
I was going to say, in theory,
Chicago's 5 back. That's it.
Out of the wild card spot.
Yeah, and they're last place in the division. I mean, so. They're 11.5 back of Milwaukee. They're only a half game back of the Reds. So, I mean, you're 2 games back at Pittsburgh. I mean, it's man.
I'm trying to think of who would even, because you start eliminating some of the teams who have good enough pitching that they wouldn't need to. I mean, my guess is it's going to be a team that we never saw coming, because over the next couple of weeks, there's probably going to be another injury to somebody that's going to force the hand of a team out there. So it's hard to handicap. It's hard to pick a team right now because you can't see that coming. But I don't know what team would be the favorite right now.
Yeah, I couldn't think of one. That's why I asked you. I was hoping you would be able to lead us a little more. You're in the same boat I am. Like, I can't think of one. And as soon as
you eliminate the AL Central, kind of, right now, I don't think that Baltimore is in a position to need to go do that. Like,
I would say they do need it. I would say they're not in the position. They're not going to pay that ransom.
Well, yeah, they
command.
I was going to say they need another starter, but they don't need a guy who may or may not have an innings limit, or they've got a baby to the finish line. They need They need more like a Jack Flaherty who who's ready to go for the rest of the way. So New York, I don't think is in a position to bring on another starter that they have to baby. They've had their own issues with injuries, and everybody's really healthy in that row. Yeah, I was gonna say everybody's healthy in that rotation, so I don't see them doing it. Seattle in the West, maybe the Astros, because the Astros have struggled with their starting pitching this year.
Yeah,
that could be maybe out. Right, and maybe one last gasp. They push their chips in the middle and do. I guess, gun to my head, Houston would be the odds-on favorite, because like I said, even if you go to the National League, I don't think the Braves are in a position to do that for somebody like that. The Phillies don't need it; it would be luxury for them.
Going back to the American League, Texas is a team that would.
Texas could, yeah.
They need another starter. Now the question is, are you going to pay it? And that's where
they've spent so much.
Exactly, I know.
Really old guys who are also coming back from injury. So I don't know. It'll be tough. Yeah, I guess it'll be an interesting question to ponder over the next couple of weeks. And who jumps in? Do they jump in early, or is it one of those things where they wait till the last minute and he's a deadline deal? Because the White Sox want to deal him as early as possible to get the best return, but teams are going to want to pay as little as possible to get him back. So,
well, and that's the thing is, the longer you wait, the higher that price goes. But for the White Sox, just getting it done and over with is what obviously they just want to be done with it.
And they want to get the best pieces back that they
exactly. But I think at this point, I mean, if you look at the standings, everything is so jumbled up. I don't think you're going to see a wild trade deadline in terms of big name pieces leaving and going, because it's so jumbled up in the standings that I don't think the supply is not there to meet that demand. And I think that's where you're going to see, the pieces that do move are going to be higher priced and are going to be pretty big trades in terms of what's coming and going. But I don't see a lot of movement though, just because it's so jumbled up in the standings. I just don't see too many teams that are out of it that are going to be dealing these pieces. So, man, these next couple weeks are going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. And like I said, especially in the National League where it is so jumbled up, especially in the wild card, every single team but 2 are within 5 games of the wild card. I mean, it's a fun season for as crappy as the season's been so far. And again, this is not one of the best baseball seasons we have seen by any means.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't even think it rivals last year. I think last year was one of the best seasons we've had in quite a while.
In terms of this season's pretty much sucked. I mean, it really has.
It has. I was going to say because of injuries, because of the way the injuries that have affected certain teams, it has sucked is a strong word, but it's been less fun than other seasons.
I'm dying on that hill.
I mean, and that's fine. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree that it's been very disappointing. I wouldn't go as far as but it has been a disappointing season just for the you come in with certain expectations about how things are going to go and the competition level, and it just feels like there's been starts and fits throughout the season. Even the Dodgers with Mookie Betts going down, and as exciting as Ohtani's been, they've dealt with all sorts of injuries behind those guys, and it just, I don't know. There's been a lot off about this season, and I think the injuries play a huge part into that, and
that's the best way to put it. The season's been off. That's a great way to put it. That's it. Yeah, I couldn't have said any better. Scott, that's why you're my esteemed colleague. I like that. That's why.
I'm here to prop you up.
Damn it. This is where we just pump each other's tires. This is awesome. Look at us.
Do we want to jump into the National League? And you kind of previewed it. Let's just go on and talk about the Reds, because I feel like we're going to spend quite a bit of time. But I will let you lead off the disappointment. And I think it's another one of those teams that really exciting last year coming down the stretch. The offense was fun to watch. Top 5, pitching left a lot to be desired, but it looked like, hey, this is the springboard into what is going to be a really fun team for the next, 5-6 years. And this season, kind of a microcosm of the whole season for the Reds, has just been blah.
That's, you can't put it any better than that. And it's weird because going into this season, obviously the hopes were incredibly high here in Cincinnati, and you just felt like it wasn't going to go well with the Matt McClain injury early on. And then, let's be real. Injuries have railed this team to high hell all season, and that's what's held them back. And when you have the pitching like the Reds have received so far this year, the pitching has been there. Offense is not. So then you got to look back at guys like Will Benson, who, last year, were we overvaluing Will Benson? That's a legit question to have right now. I would say, yeah, because Will Benson, man, at this point in time, he has not been good. Jake Fraley, I love the dude, but
right.
TJ Friedel, love him.
He can't stay healthy.
Yeah, he's been railed by injuries all season. CES, God only knows what happened with that wrist. And that's the frustrating part of it. Matt McClain, it goes from, he'll be out a couple weeks to literally we still haven't seen him. So now you're going to have Matt McClain and CES probably gone at this rate all season. It's just, you had Noel V. Marte, who just came back, from his PED suspension. That was another key piece that was missing. It's just, this season has been so off. I'm going to go back to what we were saying with the regular season, in terms of the totality of the league. This has been such an underwhelming start to the season, for a team that has had such high hopes. You look at David Bell. I mean, what do you do with David Bell? How much is he to blame for a lot of this? That's a legit question to have as well. I like to think he's to blame for a lot of it. I would say, we talked about the analytics. He is buried in analytics. That's bit him in the ass a couple times. Now, I'm not going to blame him for guys not hitting, because let's be real, he hasn't had the depth to handle that or overcome that. So that's not all on him. Now, we've got guys coming back. You've got Nick Lodolo, who Nick Lodolo is healthy. He's hands down one of the better pitchers. I'm not going to say the best, but he's one of the better pitchers in the National League and even the entire league overall. Nick Lodolo is a nasty pitcher. He is nasty. And he just, health-wise hasn't been his thing either. It's just, this team needs help is what it comes down to. And now it is up to the ownership and the front office to make a move. A power-hitting right-handed outfielder is what this team needs. Do they go and make the move? That's what you have to look at. This team's 11 games out of the division right now. They're only 4.5 back in the wild card. They're still in it. Again, not a single team outside of Miami or Colorado is out of it yet in the wild card. So bringing in a right-handed power-hitting outfielder changes everything, I think, for this team. Because when you have everyone healthy in the infield, you got Spencer Steer, who's going to be most likely your starting left fielder each and every game. You've got, TJ Friedel, when healthy, he's your starting center fielder. You've got Jeimer Candelario, who is notoriously a slow starter, but he's picked it up. He's now playing how we expected him to play. So there's that. You've got Ellie De La Cruz, who is a budding all-star / some people I've seen toss around, future Hall of Famer. Obviously he still has a shit ton more to prove. But you can still see that, that could be the case with him. Jonathan India, he's had doubles in 8 straight games for the Reds, which is incredible. Jonathan India, dude, has been nothing short of fantastic here for this franchise the last couple seasons. And, he stuck through it all when all the rumors were there that he was going to be dealt this offseason. And, he's, coming in and each and every week each and every game, I should say, has, laced him up, and he's gone out there and played his ass off. And that's, you can't ask for much more than that. What do you do if you're the Reds? Now, Scott, obviously, you live here, but not being a full-time heavy Reds fan, from the outside looking in, if you're the Reds, what do you do, for one, with David Bell? And what do you do in terms of addressing their biggest need? Like I said, a right-handed power outfielder. From the outside looking in, well, from your perspective, what do you do?
Yeah, we talked about it, and I know, me and Mike on Crawford Sports had brought it up more than once over the offseason. Was just that the Reds went into this season depending a lot on second-year guys or guys that had just broken out or had career years or, to that point had shown potential, but again, like everything just kind of worked for him last year. Everything coalesced, and they, everything they needed pitching. And so when the offseason started, that was what they did. They brought in Martinez, they brought in Frankie Montas. They hammered the pitching. Yep. Were they the best pitchers in the world? No. They shopped in the bargain bin. They got guys that they come in and throw innings and make it. Oddly enough, it's kind of flipped. Like the worries were legit that this offense would maybe take a step backwards and struggle. Now, nobody could see the degree that it would struggle to. And I do believe that injuries, just like the Braves and quite a few other teams, it's just hamstrung them. I mean, you can't lose a Christian Encarnacion Strand for 3/4 of the season when he was counted on to come in and take a big step. And even if you do take away him, Matt McLain was an all-star, played at an all-star level. He doesn't even get going before he gets injured. And then as good as De La Cruz has been, he started off like a ball of fire and then he cooled off. And we've seen those things where it's just like, yeah, we know what you're going to get out of Elly is really great hot streaks where he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball, but then the lows are so low and can drag so long. And for an offense that has been missing a Fraley for due to injuries, a Friedel not in and out of the lineup, everything, a Novelli Marte who had the PED suspension, like those long lulls where Elly is off are much more noticeable when there's nothing else there.
Yeah, when there's no depth. Oh yeah.
So like, he needs to be a piece of this. He cannot be the entire thing. And so it's just kind of, they've picked it up on the pitching, but things have been hitting. Like I never suspected that they would be this far back. I didn't pick them to win the division because, they step back, but I figured they'll be in the wild card conversation and there's still time for that to be the case.
I did.
But I don't know you did, but I mean, I did. It's been a real struggle to like kind of like pinpoint exactly what you do. And, David Bell has been a question mark around on this team and in this city for a few years. Like, in fact, a lot of people think that last year saved his job and that had the team not performed like they did, he was on the way out. Because even as the season kind of wound down and, the Reds were really hot there. And then towards the end, they kind of faded. And the questions are, well, what do you do with David Bell? Because he was, there to mentor all these kids and get them to play. And he had them on that run and then things had faded. But his deal was up. And do you invest in him some more? Do you stick with the guy that kind of got you here, but that you didn't really trust and that you were on the verge of maybe firing before the hot streak started? I don't know. To me, David Bell was never going to be the answer. He was always just kind of a short-term fix. And he's made so many, he's done fine enough, but he's not the manager that's going to take you to where you want to go. And I don't know that firing him now is necessarily the answer because, again, he's at least got the built-in excuse of all these injuries and everything. But I would say that if, you go into this offseason and things, depending on how things go, because I think that the Reds have to at least, when guys do get healthy, play to the level somewhat similar to last year for him to keep his job. Like if they continue to fade and we look up at the end of the year and they're in last place in the division or, finish way back and everything, I think he's got to go. I think that's an easy time to turn the page and you say, look, it just isn't going to work out on regardless of injuries and all that stuff. You just got to move on. And then you bring in the guy who you expect to be the one to grow with these guys and move on and kind of figure things out from there. But I don't necessarily think that, switching the manager is the end all be all to the answer. Is you could put in, the greatest manager of all time in there right now, and they're just going to struggle because the personnel is just
it's not there.
Expected them to do so.
See, and this is where I like your opinion. Like I said, with you being an outsider, in terms of like the Reds part of it, did we overvalue the Reds coming into the 2024 season? Obviously, I did, based off of me picking them to win the damn division. But
I think that was kind of the trap that I tried to avoid was when you're depending on a bunch of guys who all had breakouts. It's tough, like because you're like, well, if one or two of them doesn't do that, okay, you take a step back. But there's the potential there that all of them. Like you got a bunch of rookies and they all hit that second year wall. And then and we didn't even factor in injuries. Like even if I think that the Reds would be doing better record wise if you had a McLain and had Marte.
1,000%. Yes.
They would be doing, but I don't think that they would be blowing the doors off or mirroring last year just because again, the step back was going to be enough that they weren't going to be as good just from the front. You factor in the injuries and all that, and it's been too much. So if if Marte can continue if he keeps his head straight and plays to the way that we know he's capable of, and hell, the first game back, he played like gangbusters. It was like, that's right. He was a budding superstar, or the projections are there that say that he is a prime prospect. He plays like that. They can get this thing turned around a little bit. But you also have to worry about as good as the pitching has done in terms of what the Reds are expecting coming into the season. You hope that it's not a case where maybe you get a couple of these guys healthy and the offense gets rolling and then the pitching takes a step back. So
yeah, you can't afford to have. I mean, it's got to be, both of them have got to be going together. If not,
right. I was gonna say, and so the pitching has to keep it up the rest of the way. And I don't know if they have enough juice to do that, because the bullpen struggled this year too. You take the step back from the closing spot there. The back end of the bullpen hasn't been as reliable, so that's cost him.
Yeah, Alexis Diaz is not what
Yeah,
and he was our savior at that point. But
right, same thing where it was just like he pitched so well last year, but he was so on the edge with everything. Like the numbers suggested that it was like he was good, but he was right there on the brink of being, kind of what he is this year, where it's just like everything that can go wrong kind of does go wrong for him for the most part. So the margin of error has just been razor thin, and unfortunately for the Reds, it just hasn't worked out. And then, you factor in the rest of the division has gotten better. The Pirates, who we said coming to this year were going to be better, they've been probably better than we suspected with their young pitchers taking steps forward. The Cardinals have not been nearly as awful as they were last year.
That's stunning to me.
Right. Yeah. And then even the Brewers, I think, we thought maybe they'll take a step back because they got rid of Burns, and, some of these other offensive guys, have stepped up. They've got a lot of kids. They've inserted a lot of younger guys, and they've kept rolling along. So the Reds have just been stuck in this spot where it's just like everything that can go wrong has, basically. And to think that their record is what it is. I think that's testament to the signings that they did bring in and the guys that they do have. That if everything was to go right, we'd see a much better team. So,
yeah, and at this point, like I said, when you're relying on guys like Will Benson, who again has never been a phenomenal baseball player, like he's just not like there's a reason he spent a good amount of time in the minors.
And he's shown flashes.
Yeah, and he did last year. And then I think at that point, and a lot of people were bitching, to the Reds about not making a move last year at the trade deadline. Looking back, I think they made the right move in not going for it in terms of, going to get somebody, because these guys were playing and you didn't know what was going to happen this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't
I think they were. I was gonna say, I think they were justified to not make a big splashy move to try to push in for it last year, because you looked at what was coming and you thought, all right, you make your bigger moves in the off season.
Exactly.
You supplement everything where you don't have to pay the tax on getting guys mid season and trying to contend and doing all that. I think the execution was sound, but the results just haven't been there.
And it's just been one of those things, like you said, the injuries have, it has railed them all year, and they've been victim of it. But now you're at the point to where you have to, now you got to make a decision. Like I said, a right-handed power outfielder. There's a guy, Luis Robert. Now the Reds are going to have to make a move, and if they do, they're going to have to deal from their chips in the minors. That's just how it is. I mean, at this point in time, you can't avoid that. So I think this year, if you do it and nothing pans out, then you could really look at the whole David Bell situation. But if they don't do anything and they stand pat and it remains status quo and they continue to spin their tires, he's going to be back another year. And I don't know at this point in time what benefit that is for anybody. I don't see one. And that's the hard part, because at this point, what we've seen, like I said, is so underwhelming. But again, a lot of it is, it's not all on management. It's not all on coaching. It's just been the unfortunate fact that injuries have killed them. But then also you watch him do dumb shit on the base paths each and every game, and you're like, oh my God. Now that's on coaching. Like that is just
right.
That falls on that part of it. So it's like it's just there's no consistency with with who to blame. That's what's kind of aggravating about it, because you can't really nail it down to one thing. It's just it's coaching, it's lack of depth, it is injuries, and it's everything, and that's the problem. And it's tough to figure out how to address it, because at this point in time, like I said, you're going to have to pay for a piece to bring in to now coincide with these studs that you have here. Because I mean, let's be real, some of these guys are, they're studs, and CES, the guy can hit, but he's out. Matt McLean, budding all-star, he's out. I mean, you do have Noelvi Marte, who I think is a legit major league player. Ellie De La Cruz, like I said, he's so damn streaky. But, man, when he's on, dude, he is one of the most exciting players in this league. Dude's got 40 steals already, and it's just now July. 40 steals already. So that's what Ellie can do. Yeah, you're going to have to ride out, the tough times and the slumps, but I'm okay with that. Spencer Steer, what you're getting with him. Candelario, like I said, he's played to his baseball card, and he's been exactly what the Reds have signed him. They signed him for. So I think the overvaluing a lot of it has been, the downfall to this team. I think you could have done a little more in the offseason, but based off of what you saw last season going into this year, I can't really fault them for not, because you didn't know what to expect going into this season, and you didn't, sure as hell didn't expect these guys to be slumping like they are now. So
right. Well, you mentioned Luis Robert, which he's another likely White Sox to get dealt along with Kershaw, because the White Sox, they need to tear this whole thing down, and I want to hear. Obviously, you brought up his name because that's a player that you think might fit in Cincinnati, but
he would fit, but I don't know.
I'm not a big Luis Robert guy.
I'm not either.
When you're talking about needing somebody to stay healthy, he's not exactly somebody that I would be pursuing if I was the Reds, just from that standpoint.
No, I agree, because he can't say right. Well, hell, he fits right along the lines of this team.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of guys that struggle to stay healthy, so I don't know if paying a premium for a Luis Robert is the answer, because while when healthy, he might fix it. In between there,
that's my fear.
Yeah. And he strikes out a ton. And so, getting a guy like him it's more fun. It's more put butts in the seats. It's a name. But I don't think you necessarily need a guy like that, because he's going to cost a lot. And in Cincinnati, you don't have to have Luis Robert power. You can get it out with a guy that's, that comes a little bit cheaper. But again, same thing where he's right-hander. It's a short porch there, and it's a short porch. Cincinnati is one big short porch. So, I don't think they need a guy like Robert who has, boatloads of power, who costs a lot, and who can't stay healthy.
No, but that's the name I've continuously seen linked to
the Reds. Yeah.
But, to me personally, do I do it? I would entertain it. I'm not gonna lie.
I guess it would just depend on the cost, but the cost that I've heard from the White Sox, earlier this season, they were talking about wanting a package bigger than the one that Washington got for Juan Soto, and that is insane. I wouldn't even want to pay the price that the Yankees paid to get Juan Soto from San Diego, because that was a steep price too when you look at just the names and the pedigree. So if you're the Reds, you got to be real careful about how much. And you mentioned they don't have a ton of depth. They do have they have minor leaguers that are ready to go.
Minor league depth, yes.
Right. but they don't have immediate
major league depth.
Right. So when you see these guys going down, it's like, well, that's it, because the guys we've got behind them aren't exactly ready. So if you start dealing from that depth, then what?
When you got guys like Stuart Fairchild and Jacob Hurtubise, those are your starters.
Right.
Are you shitting me?
It's a real tightrope you have to walk if you're Nick Kroll, because there's only so much that you can deal with from the team you currently have in order to make it better.
And that's the thing. I mean, you're going to have to deal prospects. That's just how it is. But it's going to depend. I mean, I look at it, what big right-handed bat's going to be out there? That's the issue you're going to run into.
Yeah.
Am I going to overpay? It's not, to me at this point in time for this ball club, I'm not overpaying. Now, no. I look at, obviously with the draft coming up here in a couple weeks, I sit back and I'm like, well, there's a couple guys, obviously with the Reds picking second, there's a couple guys that you're going to see that you legitimately could see on this ball club in September. I mean, one of them, Charlie Condon, he's a utility player, third baseman. Now he's played all over for Georgia. He broke the BBCOR home run record this year. Right-handed power bat. I mean, but then again, you've got so much freaking depth on the infield, it's not even funny. But you can't afford to wait that long, though.
Right. Well, not only that, I mean, you don't want to put all your eggs in the freshly drafted basket.
It's not a Bryce Harper situation.
Right. Yeah. You want to get something, and you don't want to force that upon anybody coming into like, oh, hey, you're our savior. We're not dealing for anybody. Or not.
Baseball's so different,
right? Because
we're such a different animal.
Yeah, we think you can come in here and say, like, I wouldn't put that on, no matter how talented they are, I wouldn't put that on any rookie coming into a team. Like, oh, hey, we need you to save us because we're too cheap or don't have the resources to go to get anybody. You can do that, right? You're fresh out of college, you got no problem with that? Yeah, sure.
I mean, Wyatt Langford did.
But Wyatt Langford didn't come until the end or beginning of this season. He didn't end up playing at the end of the last season.
He should have been up last season.
Yeah, no, I mean,
that's what I'm getting at. Like
he should have been.
He should have been, but no, they held him off. No, but I mean, and that's the weird part about baseball. Like I said, is any other league, like NBA or NHL, these dudes are expected to come in immediately. NFL, obviously, but
and they generally can come in and make an impact right away.
But like I said, now with baseball. We're starting to see it though more and more, and that's been the change in the system in the last couple seasons of these dudes now being able to come in now. But it's still, you cannot as an organization sit there and go, okay, I'm going to put all my eggs, like you said, in the Charlie Condon basket, the Travis Pizzana basket, Jack Caglione. Not happening.
Yeah, and I think in terms of baseball, if a guy was to come up and make an impact from the draft or shortly after the draft, it's going to be a pitcher. Like Paul Skeens could have probably pitched in the majors last year.
1,000% he could.
After leaving LSU and been effective. But I think
you could have thrown him in right after the College World Series, after they won the title. He could have gone in 5 days later and shoved again.
Right. Well, but I think it's a lot easier for a pitcher to do that than it is a hitter. Like a hitter is just not going to come in and just, there's such an adjustment period. And don't get me wrong, pitchers have an adjustment period too, but the unknown, the fact that they're out there doing their own thing on the mound, it's much easier to make that transition. I think I've seen, the Braves drafted Joey Devine out of North Carolina State. I think it was 2007, somewhere around there. And he was their closer. He came in and pitched in the back and helped the Braves down the stretch after getting drafted, 2 months prior. Rare as all hell. But he was coming out of the bullpen, limited exposure. That type of thing can happen.
Mike Leake for the Reds. Mike Leake was Arizona State. Came out and then he literally spent – he was a fart in the breeze in the minors, and then came up like later on that summer, and it was like, but again, that's
very rare.
Right.
Very rare, and you do not want to. You don't want to put a kid in that position if you don't have to.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So I mean, that's the hard part. With this team, like I said, they have options coming up in this. In 2 weeks when the draft comes along, the Reds are going to have options, and they are in a phenomenal spot with there's 4 or 5 guys that they're going to be able to draft that are going to be able to help later on this season. I mean, as early as September, any one of the 5 guys that could, that I'm thinking could be on this Major League Ball Club in September. But again, you cannot afford as an organization to sit there and say, all right, that's what we're going to bank on. So, depending on what happens, I'm going to say leading up these next 2 weeks to the All-Star break, and now unfortunately the Reds have 3 games with the Yankees and, in New York. I mean, it's like, damn, man, like, you can't catch a break. But what if they go in there and take 2 or 3? I mean, the Blue Jays, who have been dog crap all season, just split with the Yankees. So, who's to say the Reds don't go in there and take 2 or 3? Starting to kind of maybe roll, have a little bit of momentum rolling into, the next couple of series leading up to the All-Star break. I mean, who knows? But again, as an organization, I think you have to make a move. It's just at what cost? And that's seemingly what we always say here in Cincinnati, because some organizations, the Padres with A.J. Preller, could give a shit. The Braves with, Alex Anthopoulos. Alex Anthopoulos doesn't care. He's a phenomenal, GM. You have Jerry Dipoto out in Seattle. He doesn't care. But, some of these guys, you really have to think about it. And that's what, unfortunately, that's where we are here in Cincinnati. But I'm not going to overpay. So that's where I'm like, if you can get Luis Robert cheaper, I'm all in. For what he's going to cost, no. But like I said, he's the only reason I brought that name up, like I said, is because
sure
he's the name that's been linked with him, and I've seen it numerous times. So
right, and as much as I like the wild card and having more teams be in it for longer, don't you miss the days when the trading deadline, when you knew about this time? This is about the time when the trading deadline was about a week or so earlier than it is now. But 2,
yep.
the teams were starting to get their ducks in a row to ship guys out because they were out of it or whatever. And you had like a list of names. There was like 10 guys that were like prizes at the trade deadline. Right now I'm sitting there like, I don't even know who that is because there's so many teams still in it. They're like the names have barely started. I mean, we've been talking about the White Sox being, deadline sellers since the season started. So none of their players are a shock because, like I said, we've known that they're all going to get dealt. But I have no idea who else is going to decide. I guess the Marlins. The Marlins are another team that
Marlins and Rockies, but I don't think Rockies really have too much you're not going to deal with. I mean,
I was going to say the Rockies don't have a whole lot to ship out, in terms of guys that people want, and the Marlins, the guys that you do want, are hurt.
Exactly.
I mean, Jesus Luzardo was on the show on the 60-day IL. I know there was a lot of talk about him getting dealt. Jazz Chisholm could still end up on a new team, but the excitement and the fervor that once surrounded him is kind of gone. I mean, he'd be a fine addition, but he's not a game-changing, bat for.
He's not putting you over the top if you're going to go
right. What it is. And you got to worry about him staying healthy the rest of the way because Jazz likes to hurt himself getting out of bed. So much in the same way when you're talking about dealing for a Crochet, it's like, well, how much do I give up for a Jazz Chisholm? I know that when he's on, he can be one of the better, one of the top 50 players in the game. But when he's not playing, right? But when he's not playing well, he can be really bad in the same type of Ellie way where it's just like, anybody heard from Jazz? He hasn't gotten a hit in weeks. And oh yeah, he's injured again.
Yeah,
which is an even bigger problem than him not performing is the fact that he usually can't stay healthy. Which, shockingly enough, he's stayed healthy this year.
In a season that's loaded with injuries, he's the one that's staying healthy. How the hell is that possible?
The season where the injuries come in nonstop. I guess because it's the year of the superstar injury, and I guess maybe the memo hasn't reached Jazz that he's not a superstar.
That invitation to be injured and got lost in the mail for him.
Be superstar will get injured, but I guess Jazz is immune to that for this year.
It doesn't apply to me.
Well, we mentioned Skeens, and just briefly, I will talk about the Braves and the Pirates played over this weekend. I got to see more of Skeens, which was always a good thing. I wasn't exactly thrilled to watch him against Atlanta, and he ended up pitching. He struck out 9 through 6. he struggled in that it was one of those things where I'm watching him and I'm like, I know that he's a little bit off because I've seen him when he's on. And it was just where guys weren't swinging and missing as much. Like being able, like that's how you know. Like Skeens is so good that even when he's pitching well, the slightest of thing that is off is all you need to say. And I'm like, he got done, and I'm like, wow, feels pretty good to have gotten away. And then I looked at him like 9 strikeouts. Oh well, I guess.
Well,
I guess I was gonna say, I guess that's a good day against Paul Skeens.
I mean, hell, at this point, yeah.
Getting him out of the game at 6 innings. And that's what I kept thinking. I'm like, well, they're getting his pitch count up. And they did, but through 9 strikeouts, I guess your pitch count will get up there pretty quickly. But Braves ended up winning in extra innings. Your boy, your former Red, Adam Duvall with the walk-off single. There's not much else to say other than that Skeens is fun to watch. Like there's a handful of pitchers at any given time in the league that no matter who they're playing for, no matter what's going on, like they're, as far as I'm concerned, I want to see them pitch, and I don't get to do that as much as I used to in my single days before no kids. It used to be, oh hey, such and such is pitching tonight. I'm going to turn it on just so I can watch them pitch. I don't get to do that as often as I'd like. So it tends to have to be against Atlanta or a mid-afternoon matchup that I get lucky on or something like that. But it's always fun to watch a guy like Skeens do what he does well. So.
It's appointment television is what it is when he's on the mound. Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And I'm just jealous watching Pittsburgh. It's nice that Pittsburgh had something to root for, but I'm like,
finally, yeah.
but it is very much like, man, I think you can have a guy like that in your rotation. Good Lord. To have that feeling of, you're not going to lose at all when that guy pitches. And I know that aura will go away. Like even with Strasburg, eventually it got to the point where it's like, oh yeah, he's beatable, he's mortal, like, he'll have his bad days, and Skeens will have his bad days too. But man, while he's still got that glow about him, it is just
I'm going to be horned up while he's still dealing. That's just how it is, man. I mean, dude, I have to. I'll admit it.
Hey, like I said, when you
gotta do what you gotta do.
And I get a chance to, I'm right there with you. So,
but yeah, in all seriousness, like I said, we joke about every show. It seems like, but I mean, legitimately, it is appointment television. When you get a chance to watch a guy like him pitch, and he's one. Like I said, I watched him when he was at Air Force, and then when he transferred to LSU, I was like, oh man, because I remember talking to my cousin about it. And I was like, man, because there was like rumblings that he was going to be leaving the Air Force Academy. And my cousin was like, yeah, he's totally going to go. And the greatest part was his quote was, flying a jet is pretty cool, but owning one is even better. And I'm like, well, you're not wrong there. And I'm like, because it was projected, like I said, him, at Air Force, like I said, the dude was an absolute stud. A leader of men. The guy is just an unbelievable human being. So then he takes that to LSU with that team. I mean, holy shit.
Well, and I found out during the broadcast, I did not know that he was a two-way player, and he played catcher. When he was at Air Force. I had no idea.
Dude, he caught DH and pitcher. He was he was a freak.
That blows my mind. Because, I mean, if you're going to be a two-way player, catcher is the most brutal position. It is one of the most brutal positions in sports, and at least non-contact sports, where it's just, you're just taking a beating back there between foul balls and foul tips and guys running into you on the rare occasion at home, whatever it may be. Like a catcher's shelf life is generally short. So the idea that a pitcher is premium as Paul Skeens was back there playing catcher, I mean, I guess Bryce Harper didn't make it to the bigs doing that. But I mean, I remember when Bryce Harper was coming up and he was a catcher as a kid. It's like, right. Oh yeah, there's no way that he's ever going to be able to play catcher because the position's just too brutal.
Yeah. And then here's Skeens doing that at Air Force and then
doing it in college, man.
Yeah. And then, like obviously, and then once he went to LSU, that was,
right. Yeah. Well,
you're definitely our bell cow here. And it's like, all right, we know what we're going to do with him.
And the bigs, they would never dream of putting him back there at the catcher. But the fact that he was playing it at the collegiate level, I have that much more respect for him as ball player. Just knowing.
And I want to say I could be wrong in this, but I want to say he might have been all Mountain West at catcher at one point. I could be wrong on that, but before he transferred to LSU, the dude, I mean, he was an absolute stud. And so like I said, obviously I had a personal connection with that, like I said, just family and stuff. So I've always been, enabled, Jesus Christ. Enamored is what I was trying to get at. Enamored by Skeens, but, and then watching him at LSU and watch what he did last year. Dude's throwing 150 pitches in games, man. Like, and it's just, it's insane. But just what he does. And then, there's some guys that you see and are going to translate to the big leagues. And he was definitely one of them.
And speaking of another one, you mentioned it very briefly.
I was just going to say it. You got it.
But last night, Wyatt Langford, another one of those up-and-coming stars, hit for the cycle last night, man. And he, as exciting as Skeens is on the mound, I feel like Wyatt Langford is that exciting. Now, he hasn't been so far this season because started off slow, then he got hurt. But since he came back from his injury, man, he has been exactly what we thought he would be. Again, showing on all that promise that he had in spring training where he's just hitting bomb after bomb after bomb. Still hasn't, the power hasn't fully caught up, but just the overall game and just the way that he plays, and you can see it. Like Wyatt Langford is going to be a superstar in this league for a while, assuming that the injuries stay at bay for him too.
And just think, at this time last year, he was like in the classroom at Florida. Like, that's insane. Yeah,
really
he was.
Matt pointing out that he hit from the cycle from the 6th inning on. Like, that is just insane.
The dude is, and he's a freak of an athlete too. And if you look at him,
fast as hell.
Yes, you don't.
That's what blows my mind about the most is how fast he is. 99th percentile speed, and every time I've seen him, get on his horse, it's like it looks effortless. He's just floating around the bases, and he's so big that your mind has trouble like wrapping around.
Yeah, you cannot comprehend it.
How quick he's moving. He's not like he's not a Juan Pierre where you're just like, oh yeah, that guy looks fast. Or even Elliot De La Cruz, you're like, okay, he looks fast. He's got those long legs, and you just you see he looks like a sprinter. There's nothing about Wyatt Langford that suggests that he'd be that fast, and there he is, just blowing around.
Dude, he just flat out hauls, and it is. He's so fun to watch. And like I said, he's won again, being the college guy, watching him last year in the College World Series, part of a team with Jack Caglione. That's like you see that and it's like, man, these guys were on the same team together. And you got another guy in Jack Caglione who could go, 1-1 overall this year. And it's like, it's like I said, the talent, if you look at the talent that was on the College World Series last year to this year, it's just insane how quickly some of these guys, and Wyatt Langford, I remember I texted you last night. As soon as he did it, I was like, because I got the notification he was going for the cycle, and I didn't get a chance to flip it over because we were at my in-laws, and I was like, and I looked.
Well, I was sleeping because, work.
Yeah, work. Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, and I texted you. I said, Wyatt effing Langford. That's all I said. And I was like, I'm just going to leave it at that. He's going to wake up and he's going to see it, and he's going to know. And because he even said, he came out and said, I was going for the cycle. I wanted to hit for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And damn it, he did. And he leads off with a triple and a double and then single. And then all he needed was the home run and boom. He's just a freak, man. He's so good. And another young talent in this league that we just get to sit back and just go, oh, man, how awesome is this?
Yeah, Matt saying that he thinks college has become the preferred pipeline at this point, and that NIL helps the kids make that decision too. And high school, there's always going to be a certain amount of high school players that get drafted, but I do think that the shift is starting to go a little bit more because now the college players because you're not sitting there thinking, well, we've got to develop them. Like, college allows you to have like these ready-made guys. Like you don't have to sit there necessarily in case, obviously extreme cases when you're talking to me, but even some of the guys who maybe are less heralded than a Wild Langford are still coming up within the first couple of years. Like we're still talking about, like, I mean, look at Zach Neto for the Angels. He got drafted and it was, a year later and he was in the league too. I mean, that gap is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller for college baseball players in general, the younger players in general. But I think that we're seeing more success from these college guys come in and maybe a little bit more struggles, which you would only expect from high schoolers coming into the league and going from playing with high school boys to grown ass men in the league. That obviously there's a struggle there, but I think if you can get a guy like Wyatt Langford and you have the choice between a Wyatt Langford and a high school kid, that you take the Wyatt Langford, even if he's, 4 years older than some of those guys, because you know what you're going to get right out of the gate and you don't have to wait for it.
Like I said, there's, and this, and like I said, we'll talk draft here coming up the next couple episodes, but I mean, right now there's like 4 or 5 guys right now that are major league ready, in my opinion, that can hop right on in. And that's what
hold their own.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, you see a Wyatt Langford and then you just sit back and it's just like, holy shit, man. Like, how fast, but I think a lot of it too, the COVID year, the COVID year screwed a lot of people over, but I think it's also benefited a lot of players as well. So they had that extra year of development. And again, now it has closed that gap. And now we are starting to see these guys, like I said, more and more. And that was what was so awesome about this College World Series and even the NCAA tournament. And hell, even this college season, this was the best year of college baseball that I have seen in my God, in decades. And I've been watching college baseball forever. But
and I think that the COVID season did a number on quite a few guys' career to either screw it up to where they'll never have the career that they might have had.
Yeah.
But the good offshoot of that is it forced a lot of teams to have to rely on those guys that they had drafted in certain cases and get called up or put in situations that they otherwise might not have. And the trickle-down effect from that COVID year was, there were a lot of guys whose growth was stunted or irreversibly, there's no way that their careers are going to recover from it because they didn't get that development that they needed and were thrust in a position they weren't ready for. Yep. But on the other side of that coin is that we did get to where teams are like, hey, maybe some of these guys are ready, or maybe there's a development path where we don't have to spend 2-3 years in the minors before these guys are ready. We can just jump them right up from AA. I remember it used to be a big deal when a guy got jumped up from AA. Now you almost expect it. I mean, they're not even going to AAA anymore. It's just, oh no, this guy's in AA. He'll be in the majors next week. So COVID screwed a lot of things up for a lot of guys, but it did, I think,
like you said, there's that benefit,
right, in the minds of franchises, and I think we as fans are more accepting of it too. Like, because once upon a time, I know I would have been like, well, there's no way these guys are ready to play, and you ignore but you highlight more of the struggles. Like a Wyatt Langford, if he had been called up 5, 6, 7 years ago and struggled like he did to start this season.
Oh God!
He'd have been back down in the minors before the end of April. But credit to the Rangers for letting him play through that and letting him get the experience in and recognizing he's good enough to be here and he's good enough to make the adjustments. And we just have to give him time. We have to be patient. You can't just throw a guy in there and decide after a few weeks and a small sample size of at bats that, oh no, he's not ready. He's overmatched. He's got to go. Yeah, there's still going to be those guys that it's obvious they have no business being there. And I mean, heck, even in the case of Jackson Holliday, it was obvious that he needed a little bit more time in the oven. But I don't think it deters the and then the Orioles are in a different position too, where they had so many options. I mean, Texas was kind of forced into it, but not in the sense that if they didn't want to being defending champs, they certainly wouldn't have had to throw Wyatt Langford in there and start him, more or less start him from day one if they didn't want to.
And nobody would have questioned it either.
Right?
Like that. I mean, it's not like, in the Red situation where it's like, oh man, we have all this young talent, that has to come up now because we got nothing else. Texas, I mean, hell yeah, like you said, we're defending champs. Like we don't have to do this.
Right.
But they did. And that's the great part about it. You're right. You're spot on with that.
Well, before we get out of here, we've done all this talk about college in the last half hour. And I think it's like we have got to talk about one of my favorite baseball stories, and just in general when it comes to especially collegiate athletics, we've got quite the rivalry story that there may be quite a few people that don't know about this. I'm going to let you set the stage here, and then we'll go, because I know you have the details a lot more than I do. Plus, it's just hilarious.
It's amazing. Yeah, this is prototypical college athletics to a T, but now it is trickled into the baseball side of it, which is awesome. So, we've talked about the College World Series, Texas A&M taking on Tennessee. Tennessee, coached by Tony Vitello, who is just, a lot of people say he's the sexiest man in college baseball. He's a good-looking dude, taking on Jim Schlossnagle and Texas A&M. Now, Schlossnagle is one hell of a coach. Came from TCU. Came over to Texas A&M, so this was his second season in charge. And so it came out literally the day of Game 3 of the College World Series, so last Monday, that Texas had fired their head coach, David Pierce. And when we saw that, it was kind of one of those situations like, okay, why? And now, because it seemed like the entire time Jim Schlossnagle was going to go to Texas. Well, that's what happened. Now, that happened 12 hours after the Texas A&M Aggies lose in the national championship Game 3 by a run. Tennessee captures the national championship. Post-game, a reporter asked Schlossnagle about the elephant in the room, the open job with Texas, and Schloss gets pissed and, says it's an embarrassment and, goes off and basically says, I ain't leaving anywhere. Well, then he goes literally 12 hours later to Texas and takes his entire staff with him. So, I mean, this is exactly what college baseball needs. And
I think the funniest part for me was being asked at the press conference as the game ends and he pounds his fists on the table and basically chastises the reporters as it's crazy to even think about it. He's not going anywhere. And how could he be asked such a thing? And then 5 minutes later, he's the head coach of Texas.
Well, you know why? Because he was caught. He was busted.
Well, right. Well, and it was classic. You mentioned it, but it's like, and it kind of just alluded to it was straight out of college football.
Totally.
This was not something that generally happens in college baseball where you have but for a guy to go from, and for me, it's the theater of A&M to Texas.
The hate between them two is awesome.
The rivalry, that deep rivalry in baseball is, college baseball isn't a huge thing, but for those two programs, it is. For both Texas and Texas A&M, and for an A&M team to get to that World Series final and think, we've got this guy who we think is going to be here for a while, and we're set up to succeed, and then he leaves immediately after that game. But not just for anybody. He leaves for your hated rival and takes the whole staff with him. God, I mean, it's the equivalent to a Harbaugh leaving Michigan and going to Ohio State right after it. And it would just blow minds, but that's exactly what happened. And again, I love it.
Oh, it's all, like I said, this is exactly what college baseball needs. For a season that has been the most watched in the sports history, to now you have it, like I said, I put in our show rundown.
You have a villain.
Yes, you have the WWE type heel now in Jim Schlossnagle now, who is now coaching the hated Burnt Orange of Texas. And it's like, oh my God, what it's amazing is this deal. So he's friends with the AD of Texas. They are best friends. So this was a deal that was apparently in the works from what I had heard since the regionals. So this has been in the works for a couple weeks.
Of course, this definitely wasn't something that happened overnight. They weren't just like, hey,
God forbid,
new head coach.
But then nobody knew about it. And that was the thing. And that's where somebody had tipped off that reporter. That had to have been the case for that reporter to ask. And I don't remember the guy's name, but for them to, obviously called him out on it. Hence why Schloss was pissed, because he's now busted for it. Like, oh man, now I'm kind of the pants down. Now what?
Another part of that story is that I heard that he was calling recruits on burner phones, so that,
I didn't hear that.
in the process, during this process where Texas is reaching out to him, he started calling recruits on burner phones to say, hey, I'm going to Texas. Like, you should come, come with me. So it's like, not only did he throw the big theatrics and get all upset with the reporters, it's like he took the job and was also actively trying to take recruits that he had brought into A&M to go with him to make that jump over to Texas. Like, it was the most dirty thing that you'll ever see. But I love it because there's a villain. College baseball has a villain, and if you're Texas, or if you're Texas A&M, woo, those Aggie fans, man, they responded in the most brutal ways. Like, the internet is a funny place when certain things happen, and that was one of them for me. My Twitter feed and timeline was just littered with these things that just, scathing. Like, the hate is real. I can't imagine that first matchup between Texas and Texas A&M on the baseball field. That's going to be must-see TV. Like, I hope that they televise that game somewhere that I can see it.
Oh, it will. And I hope the game is at Bluebell Park in Texas A&M. Like, it has to be in Aggie Land. It has to be. But the cool part is they're like, everybody, like, apparently like I said, nobody knew about it. So the coaches, who Michael Early and Max Weiner are the two big assistants with Jim Schlossnagle, were like, oh shit. And they end up going with him. But then Texas A&M did the smart thing, reached out to Michael Early, who is he was Schloss's right-hand man at A&M. Mm-hmm. They hired him back. So he literally has a picture on his bio picture at Texas for like 5 minutes, and him in a Texas uniform. And now he's the head coach. So all these guys, literally after the move happened, like almost the entire team went into the transfer portal. And now they're coming back. They are jacked up that Michael Early is the head coach in A&M. So A&M did the right thing by bringing in a guy that is so well respected with that program. The dudes love him, and guys are saying, hey, we're coming back, man. Like, we're hopping out of the portal. We're back. Let's go Aggies. And that's what it's all about. But, man, just the fact that it happened the way it did, it just makes it so much better. Like, it's just, oh man, exactly what this sport needed, man. It is, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's just, it's just pure heaven right now for any baseball fan, just to see what, how it's played out. Is
I know that the draft is like the final stamp. But just I guess to close the book on the college season itself, this is the most hilarious way
the only way to handle it,
to put the bow on it. It's like, hey, congratulations, Tennessee. And also, by the way, the runner-up has this crazy ass situation that just happened. And they got it. But I didn't realize that he had been pulled from TCU. So
yeah,
if you're A&M, like, you kind of know this, right? Like, you kind of know the deal. You stole him from TCU. So, like, what, you thought maybe he was only going to have eyes for you? Like, I don't know.
He's been poured out around Texas is what it comes down to. Schloss he's a Texas whore. He's been all over that state, man. Like, he's all over.
I guess if you're Texas, the only the only concern you have is like the Astros or Rangers come calling, right? Like that's the next move. Like you're at the top of the mountain there in the collegiate world in Texas, right? You don't have to worry about anybody else collegiately, right? He clearly has a type. It's Texas. His type is Texas, so you're like, okay, like this is us. Like he can't go to any prettier girl in Texas, right? Like, but if the Rangers or Astros come calling, I don't know.
But you know, one thing in all seriousness about this, the one big part of it is the job security. Like I said, he's working for his buddy now. Like the best friends. The AD of Texas is his buddy. And Trev Alberts, the AD at A&M, new guy, who's to say that, if they don't, he didn't bring him in, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that situation. But now it's like, hey,
Scotty's suggesting that when he fails at Texas, he goes to Texas Tech. Now that would be hilarious.
I mean, you got Dallas Baptist down there. You got University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. You name it. You got
Texas State.
Oh shit, Texas State. I forgot about that. I mean, you got all over, man. He's Houston, Baylor. I mean, you name it.
He's got fallback options.
Oh, SMU. Hell, he's got all kinds of options down there. It's amazing. It's just, man. It's perfect. I mean, this, like I said, just for what the way the season went and just how amazing it was, just be capped off by this story is just.
Yeah, I promise you, it was not something that I had on my bingo card. It was college baseball head coaching theatrics on the same level as college football, because that's usually where you see that. I mean,
that's what's awesome.
Basketball to a certain level has its own type of situations like that, but I don't think it doesn't get as much publicity as college football, and that's due to popularity. But
yeah,
it's generally when I think of coaching changes and the type of fuckery that happens with guys jumping for bitter rivals, I generally think of college football. So
that's where it is, man. That is that is the cream of the crop for it. And it's like, that was the funny part. Cause like, as soon as Texas announced that firing, everyone was kind of like, they look at like, they had like the dog look, how like when you say something, your dog like tilts their head like, huh? That's pretty much what everyone was doing with it. Cause they're like, now, we've got this guy in Jim Schlossnagle and everyone knows that he's the guy. I mean, surely to God, there's no way that's going to happen. Especially like I said, literally the day of Game 3 of the national title. I mean, dude, you're gonna pull this. I mean, it's amazing. I love the jackassery of it. It's awesome, just awesome.
Yeah, but hey, this is why I'm all for NIL and the transfer portal. Kids should be able to make the same damn choice that these coaches do, and be able to bolt because I can't imagine being at A&M and then being like, oh, well, you got to stay here. Like, obviously, it worked out for the kids who were staying at A&M and the ones that pulled out of transfer. But I couldn't imagine being told, oh, no, you got to stay here. You don't have a choice, or you can transfer and sit out another year. Like, I'm glad that all that nonsense is behind us, because as easily as the coaches should be able to make that decision for themselves, the players should be able to too. So
completely agree. Yep.
So at least all parties involved, I guess, got what they wanted. I mean, outside of A&M fans, A&M fans are pretty pissed.
Even the funny part is even Tennessee fans are like on the side of A&M. They're like, everyone hates Texas and Oklahoma now. The two teams that are coming in from the outside, they're all like, oh my God, we hate these new guys coming in. Like, they hate them with a passion. So it's awesome. I mean, it's just can't ask for anything more, man. It's great.
Good stuff. Nothing like rivalries in baseball, man.
Oh, that's awesome. No doubt.
Well, I mean, I'm looking up. It's 9:30, man. This show has gone very quickly. Like,
and you know what? It was well structured. We did a good job.
I was just gonna say. Remember last week we got to this point and you were all, dude. Everything was a clusterfuck. We had everything written down. It was nonsense. This week, well-oiled machine. I tell you what. I think it's the
all cylinders. Oh, hell yeah. Man.
I did say, if cherries aren't spitting their own pits, we probably fumbled the bag again.
1,000%. 1,000% we screw this up.
Well, no doubt. As Mike likes to say, this has been a show.
It's definitely been a show.
I think we're going to leave it there. It's been a great time. We got another half season of baseball ahead of us. Hopefully the Reds can figure things out and get better position. Hopefully the Braves can hang tight and get healthy for the playoffs and be in a position to knock off the Harper and Schwarber Phillies, because I don't want there to be any excuses. I know they got to play this week, and I know that those two are going to be out, but I don't want to hear it about it. Like, because the funny part is those two will be out, and they'll be like, "Well, we're missing them." I'm like, Ronald Acuna? Anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody?
MVP.
Anybody missing the NL MVP? Phillies fans won't. They'll ignore that because they don't like the facts. But
don't let facts get in the way of a good story, man. That's how you gotta look at it.
Never. We never let the facts get in the way of a good story here on Backwards K Baseball. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode. It's been a pleasure being with you guys. You can find us where all of your fine podcasts can be found. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, the Impact Sports Cincinnati channel. And right here on the Craft Brewed Sports Podcasting Network. Also find us on YouTube. You can find that recording from the show we just did or any of our previous ones. Again, appreciate you guys joining us. For Chris, I am Scott. This has been Backwards K Baseball, and we will see you guys again next week.